Back when Bridgerton season 3 dropped 2 years ago, I made a video talking about the honesty of Cressida Cowper and what that honesty said about the ton and its hypocrisy. To be quite honest, it is one of my favorite Bridgerton videos, and I will leave it linked in the description box for those who haven't seen it, so you can give it a watch, or for those who have seen it before and want to do a rewatch. But in the video, I bring up why I find Cressida quite fascinating as a character because she is the face of what the ton is quite capable of molding its young women into. When gaining a husband and a respectable place in society is a prize, and all the young women of the ton are raised and trained to view themselves as competitors for that honor, since the pool of young, titled marriage age men is so limited and every one of them wants to come out on top. It is privilege mixed with unhealthy competition and a system that demands that the young ladies of the town hinge their entire worth on how excellent a match they are able to make. And as such, when you have that type of a situation, it isn't uncommon to have a Cressida, someone who is selfish, scheming, vindictive, manipulative, but also scarred, scared, with the pride that seeks to cover that fear and couch it as something else. With that type of situation, it isn't unusual to have someone like Cressida birth in such a circumstance. And so while season 3 ended with her family, specifically her father, having her sent away in disgrace, I did hope that she would make a grand return, and in so doing would further the conversation about the ton, what it stands for, the underbelly of polite society that we rarely get to really think about when we're all caught up with the more loving and enabling environment that is the Bridgerton household's perchance for romance and love matches. And true to form, Cressida Cowper-Gun gets to do all that and more for us when she so brilliantly makes her return in season 4. But what I think is interesting, which a lot of fans seem to not realize, is the fact that Cressida Cowper's redemption is one that has been in place, slowly building since her first introduction in the very first season of Bridgerton. Now, before I spend the next 15 or so minutes waxing lyrical about Cressida, because you all know how big a fondness I have for the unlikable women of Bridgerton, I would like to say a big thank you to my lovely patrons and YouTube members whose support have been instrumental in helping me continue to make content, especially since I started doing this full time at the start of last year, which was the last time I was in paid employment. And a special shout out to Lena, Sherry, and Holly for their extra support. You get all the hearts and kisses too. Mwah. If you too would like to support me on Patreon or become a YouTube member to enjoy certain perks, even get a shout out, the link to do so is in the description bar. And with that said, let us bring things back around to Cressida Gunn, formerly known as Cressida Cowper. Now, I know that the fandom has quite the polarizing opinion and take on Cressida as a character. Some of us hate her, some of us love her. I happen to fall into the latter category, by the way. And so, having the situation be turned around for her in Bridgerton season 4 is one that I am fairly certain a lot of Bridgerton fans have some opinion on, especially when you consider her ending in the book, which, spoilers for Romancing Mr. Bridgerton, which is the fourth book, aka Pauline's story, by the way. But in that book, Cressida had married an older man, Lord Horace Twombly, who ended up dying, leaving Cressida as a young, impoverished widow on the brink of being cast out because her husband had spun a life out of lies and pretense about the wealth he did not have, leaving Cressida to carry the blame and burden for it upon his passing. It is this desperation for funds that leads to her first laying claims to the identity of Lady Whistledown in the hope that she will be able to get Lady Danbury's promised £1,000 to unearth Lady Whistledown's identity. And when that fell apart, that alongside her anger at having been deceived on Penelope's true abilities and identities is what drives her to attempt to blackmail Pen when she finds out that she is Lady Whistledown, to catastrophic results, which some people were particularly fond of. Now, I bring this up because, like I've said before, some changes that have been made in the show is one that I actually find myself appreciating a lot because it helps to give such depth to side characters in the books that I would have otherwise have ignored or not paid as much attention to, one of whom is Cressida Cowper. Now, upon our first meeting of Cressida, we are immediately made aware in the story that Cressida is someone who is petty and jealous and pretty vindictive with regards Penelope. And whilst it is so easy to wave away her actions as the stereotypical mean girl behavior, who is just needlessly bullying another young woman who doesn't fit into their society's beauty standards, we eventually are able to better understand the jealousy that is driving her actions in that moment and the reason for it. The fact that she wants so desperately the friendship of Eloise and the love of Colin Bridgerton. And because theirs is a society that has long insisted on there not being friendship between the young ladies of the ton, seeing that they are all competing for their space on the marriage mart, then we are able to understand why she acts the way she does and why she's that vindictive. And before anyone comes and starts accusing me of things, I would like to reiterate, like I do in the videos I make about the unlikable women in Bridgerton, this is not me co signing their behavior or trying to say that they did not cause any harm. This is instead me pointing out the reasons behind said behavior and how it gives their character more depth. And so with Cressida, we get to see why she immediately lashes out at Penelope and has been doing so all these years. She was raised and trained and groomed to see other young women as a threat to her potentially getting her own happy ending. And of course, this is not made any easier by the fact that Daphne ends up proving the hypothesis right. What with her sudden switch from being all focused on Simon, which in turn had Cressida thinking that she had a chance with Prince Frederick, only for Daphne to turn her attention to the prince, which in turn leaves Cressida out in the cold. I always think about her conversation with Daphne in that moment of rare vulnerability where she brings it up that Daphne always had so much options and still took away our only option. And Daphne points out that it's not really in her hands. Frederick chose her because ultimately all the young ladies can do is sit and wait to be chosen. They do not have any agency in that regards. Doubly so if they aren't a Bridgerton and so do not have the support system of a loving family who gives them the room to be and make their love matches or not. Season 2 and the events with Jack Featherington is one that I have seen some people find hilarious or believe that it's meant to be some sort of narrative payback for Cressida. And yet, I read those events, those moments, as helping to further humanize her character and add to her character growth and development, whilst at the same time driving home the fact that ultimately all Cressida Cowper has always wanted was to be picked, to be chosen, to finally be able to live the existence for which she's been raised and trained. And because of her desperation to do that, she came really close to falling into the clutches of a con artist like Jack Featherington, whose only interest in her was her very substantial dowry. In that moment, we got to see a Cressida whose entire worth had been reduced to the money that she can bring into the marriage, ignoring the fact that the dowry is one that is often given to the bride in order to become her backing, her means of standing, of supporting herself in a marriage during an era that was so deeply patriarchal where women were not allowed to own their own money. And the horror of Jack Featherington's plans for Cressida was in the fact that he was fully prepared to lay his hands, his grubby hands, on her dowry and would have most likely drained it all shortly after their marriage because his characterization is clearly of someone who is always making terrible investments without any returns, which is why he was in so much debt and had nothing to bring to the Featherington household upon taking on the title. Now, we all know that Cressida wasn't made aware of Jack Featherington's plans as at when the marriage didn't pull through and was disappointed as a result. But by the time he skipped out of town and the word had spread that he was basically a con artist, I'm pretty sure that the news would have trickled over to the Cowpers and ultimately to Cressida herself, which would mean that in her first two seasons of the show, she's had to deal with a match who made it pretty clear that she would always be second fiddle to Daphne Bridgerton, later Daphne Bassett, and another match who clearly saw her as nothing but an investment to be drained and tossed aside. I always consider this actually as being the driving force for what then becomes her character growth and realization by the time we hit season three, the loneliness she depicts. It is not just that Eloise and Penelope are on the out, and so Eloise needed a new friend and Cressida was there. I mean, that can work as an explanation for why Eloise became friends with Cressida in the season. But I like to think that the person, the woman that Eloise meets in season three, is a Cressida who has come to the realization after her lucky escape from the clutches of Jack Featherington that everything she's been taught, everything that makes her believe that she seemingly is the catch and she'll be able to get any man she wants is not necessarily what she has always assumed, that there are traps waiting all over. None of the men that she's interacted with so far have been ones that have put her first or made her personhood the object of their desires. And so, while sometimes in the season we see her visibly push forward her pride and the catty behavior that has always accompanied her brand of self confidence, we get hit with a moment of vulnerability where we see that because she's not been able to secure that match, her person, her wealth have not been enough. She's about to be discarded, propped up as an old maid on the marriage mart, and that devastates her. And while someone like Eloise can walk that path with ease, safe in the knowledge that she would always be loved and cared for by her family, Cressida doesn't get the same privilege. Her father instead first financially abuses her and her mother to try and force her into making a match, utterly disregarding what Cressida has known to be true since the first season, which is that she cannot marry herself, nor can she make the moves to ask a gentleman to marry her. Ultimately, theirs is a world that strips her of all power and the presence thereof. And the only thing she can do is wait upon to be called and picked, which makes the horror of her father declaring that she's to be wed to Lord Greer, the septuagenarian who is looking for a young bride to bear his heirs, hit even harder for her because now Cressida has to deal with a panic that is the realization that it is as important to realize that the person who is picking her also matters. And with Lord Deblin having pulled the Prince Frederick on her, i.e., he chose someone else that was distinctly not her, even though she had hoped to make that match, Cressida is put into such an uncomfortable situation whereby she has to think fast about how to get herself out of the unwanted marriage arrangements, which is where I do believe I vastly prefer the change in the show to the books. In the books, like I said earlier, Cressida takes on the Lady Whistledown identity in order to get some money so she isn't tossed out on the streets with her husband's estate in so much debt. Whilst for me, that was an understandable reason for her actions in the book, I prefer her stakes from the show. Cressida is a young woman who realizes that she's all out of options and that the only way for her to ensure her survival is to do something that would totally be considered a disgrace by her family and Lord Gere, which would in turn free her from a life and future of what would clearly have been a case of marital rape. I need that to sink in for people. I know some fans find the betrayal of her trying to lay claim to Penn's identity as Lady Whistledown as something that is utterly unforgivable. But you know what? Lady Whistledown for Penelope was a way for Penn to hold power over her own life, to go from the wallflower to one who gets to make and shape their society through the gossip that she gets to share. It takes her from a position of powerlessness to one of true power that she gets to enjoy because it gives her so much agency over her own life. Cressida, in laying claims to Lady Whistledown, got to do the same for the brief moment that she could. And when the truth comes out, with Penn writing a new issue that was released at the same time as hers was filled with a lot of lies, yes, but lies that were more directed and written by her mother, who exploited the opportunity to get back at the other mamas of the turn that she wasn't on such friendly terms with. Violet Bridgerton. I do find it a bit unfair for the blame to be placed wholly on Cressida for that matter when it is clear that her mother played the crucial role and Cressida was just going along with it because she really did not know what else to do. And then there's, of course, the banishment to Wales to her Aunt Joanna's place with the expectation that cutting her off from Mayfair would be a punishment for Cressida. And whilst it might have been like that at the start, we, of course, know how it ends for her. She gets to meet the new Lord Penwood whilst in Wales. They form an attachment. He proposes, she marries him, and she gets to return to Mayfair as the new Lady Penwood. And I know the Cressida haters were pissed. Some were also insisting that her apology to Penelope and Eloise might not have been as heartfelt, or that the forgiveness that she got wasn't earned. And to that I say, these characters are not meant to be perfect. I mean, I love Penelope Bridgerton, but I'm also not about to kid myself that her Lady Whistledown column didn't cause quite the stare and sometimes very devastating results for the people she wrote about. She got their forgiveness when she asked for it at Philippa and Prudis's combined ball, where she revealed her identity to the rest of the ton. Eloise was not as good a friend to Cressida as she could have been in season 3, especially when matters with regards Lord Grey arose, and she still got her forgiveness either way. Neither of these two were perfect. Of course, we can say that Cressida's bullying was way worse, but like I already stated at the start of the video, there was a reason for why she was the way she was. And part of it can be laid at the feet of the way in which their society had conditioned her to be. Cressida returning, apologizing to Pen and Eloise, and wanting to do better was her extending that olive branch and wanting to wipe the slate clean. It says a lot that she's a much happier, brighter, visibly lighter, cheerful person when she's introduced as the new Lady Penwolf. And no, it's not just because her reintroduction to society now has her as a countess. I mean, she's still without the queen's favor because of the stunt she had pulled in the previous season, and everyone is aware of that. Plus they also know about her lying and pretending to be Lady Whistledown, but instead it's because we get to come full circle for Cressida. She's finally gotten what she's always wanted, what their society had tied her worth and relevance to since she was a child and knew what was expected of her. She finally got chosen. Even better, she wasn't chosen as the second option, nor was she chosen because of the wealth that she brought into the marriage, nor was she chosen to be merely tolerated. She got to have a husband who was able to meet her and know her away from the hustle and bustle of Mayfair, away from the competition of the London season, which we've already established brings out the worst in Cressida because that is what was ingrained in her to be, away from her family and the expectations they place on her and the control that they have over her. I think it says a lot that she made such a good match with a man who clearly adores her. I mean, he immediately gave her full reign to redecorate the house in the loud, bright colors that she loves because he wants to make her happy. Clearly, in that moment when Eloise apologizes to her for how she had been a shitty friend, we can see that Cressida Cowper-Gun is happy, and she got there because she finally was able to separate herself and her identity away from the London season, away from the rest of Mayfair. And I thought that was lovely. Of course, there's the surface level interpretation of Mary Wollstonecraft's writing, but you know what? Sometimes I just breathe at certain writing choices in this show and walk away. But I do think it's very interesting to know that Cressida only talks about love being present in her marriage and what she wants after she's gained some semblance of security with her match. Because for a young lady from a noble family of that time, love is all well and good as long as you do make a good match with someone who prioritizes you and your happiness. It's only within the confines of that love is able to bloom. At least that is what I get from the priority that is Cressida Cowper-Gunn's character arc and redemption within the story. Fingers crossed that we get to see more of her, even if it's a little bit in season 5. But of course, these are just my thoughts. I would, as always, love to hear yours. Whether or not you agree with me, please share them in the comments. Like this video, however, if you've watched this far and haven't done so yet, but enjoyed anything of what I had to say, share it so others can find my channel as well. Or you can check out my gaming or ASMR channels if they sound like something you might potentially be interested in. I have them both linked in the description bar. I will see you tomorrow with a new video. Until then, do remember, obsessing over the things you love, perfectly valid coping mechanism.